6 o'clock high on a beautiful eastern Central Plains of Kansas day. Beautiful Sunday here. KOFO, you're listening to the Jacobson Report on 1220 and 103.7, as well as streaming live on KOFO.com and this broadcast podcast right after the show here on KOFO.com. John Jacobson in studio on this glorious Saturday with the home and away voice of the Ottawa Braves, Blake Griffin. Welcome to the Jacobson Report, sponsored by Mid-American Energy, LLC. Renewable fuels, energy for a strong America, ethanol. Mid-American Energy, LLC. Along with Life Runners. Go to liferunners.org, get your t-shirt and run and walk for life. Life Runners, helping expectant mothers and babies on the way and once born. Again, our thanks to Midwest Renewable Energy, LLC, and Life Runners, Jim and Cindy Jandron. What a great lineup tonight. We've got Chicago Cubs Golden Glover, Bobby Dernier with us, the first Cub to score postseason for the Chicago Cubs in that great 84 division champion team with those Hall of Famers. First guy to score a run since World War II. He was at Ottawa University for a big baseball academic conference yesterday. And Coach Patrick J. Knapp Jr., the Georgetown legend, currently still broadcasting on ESPN with his own podcast. And our coaching carousel prognosticator, Scott Corey, rejoining us. So great to have you guys all with us tonight. And Blake Griffin, your calls are all over the Twitterverse and Instagram. I was there yesterday, as was our Chancellor, Bill Tsutsui. Our men and women, Ottawa Braves, both on fire, both winning doubleheader sweeps, must-wins with walk-off homers and runs, both the women and the men at the end. How thrilling was that to make that call, Blake Griffin?
I mean, it's exhilarating. This team is very special on the baseball side, and good to see softball getting back on the right foot after a struggle to start the season.
All of these students of mine on that baseball team and the softball team. Macy Raver, of course, might have overtaken and become number one on steals. I think she had 4 yesterday, maybe number one now in NAIA for steals. She scored from third to home in extra innings on that beautiful sacrifice bunt play, and huge wins for Ottawa. They're now atop their division. Bobby Dernier, there's some good baseball going on here in the East Central Plains of Kansas, isn't there?
Well, you guys immediately made me a new fan of the Ottawa Braves program there. That was a wonderful day yesterday. I'll have to figure out a spot and wander down there for a game later in the spring and see it live and in color.
Well, we'll give you a hero's welcome down there. I know all those guys on the baseball team would love to meet with you. They were busy playing yesterday while you were giving that great lecture. Coach, you remember those days very well, those Chicago days. And as I told Bobby yesterday, that zeitgeist of 1984, there was no year like 1984. I think it was one of the greatest years in American history. And Scott, you alluded to it. The Cubs were America's team precisely because cable came into its foray in all of the great Midwestern Plains states right around 80, 81, and everybody had access, and MLB didn't have the rigid contracts. So the super stations like WGN, WTBS launched the Cubs and the Braves, and the Cubs became America's team. And I was out there because I was assigned to work for Arthur Anderson Company in between undergrad and law school on that SEC project out in Chicago. And literally, Harry Carey was the mayor of Rush Street. Harry Carey became iconic. Bobby, what was it like having the Cubs as your fanboys? Bobby, what's it like with those Cubs fans and guys like Harry Carey and just the whole the run that Chicago had with Ditka and Michael Jordan? You guys sandwiched right in between there.
Well, I can tell you, probably one of the neatest compliments I ever got in baseball came from Harry. One night in Montreal, Saturday night, a bunch of us were gathered at the hotel bar, getting ready to head up to the room, and for a day game the next day. And before I got away, Harry motioned me over. He said, "Hey, Bobby, come over here. I want you to meet a friend of mine." And I was going through a little, I don't know, like a 0 for 12, little stretch, tough stretch. And after he introduced me to his friend, he said, "You know, Bobby, I just got to tell you something." He said, "Even when you stink, you look like you're trying." He said, "You'll never get You'll never get booed at home. And in typical Harry fashion, you know, he obviously had a couple of Budweisers under his belt, but he said it, and I kind of was stunned for a moment. And then as I walked away, I thought, no, wait a second. That was a high compliment coming from Harry, because the one thing he demanded from you as a player, because remember, he was a fan with a microphone in his hand.
Yeah.
And he appreciated effort. Even when you popped it up, you grounded it back to the mound, whatever it was, if you gave him a full effort, he never had a problem with you.
Right.
And of course, he loved, with Rhino and I at the top, we were always hustling.
Yep.
And creating havoc out there, hustling on defense and playing the whole game. So Harry was highly influential for me. I had a good relationship with him and Steve Stone as well. And, you know, of course, we'll never see another guy like Harry in the booth. You know, they could never tolerate that, I suppose. But
yeah.
He was a wonderful guy, and he was like the Pied Piper. When in the summer of '84, we felt a little bit like the Beatles everywhere we went. And there were crowds of Cub fans everywhere throughout the country. And so, you know, sometimes we'd look up and say, man, there's more people heading for Harry than Rhino. And so he was quite a character, guys. He was really, for me, he was fun to be around. I got to know Dutchie, his wife, just a very unique guy. And I'm happy I had a chance to play in front of him. I had Harry Callis in Philadelphia
during
my formative years.
Coach loves Harry Callis. Yeah, Coach. And John Facenda. We always talk about John Facenda here. Bobby, go ahead, Bobby.
You know, I was just going to say, you know, he mentioned Philly prior to going on the air, and I still have very fond memories. Still get to go to Philly every once in a while for alumni weekend. They treat me awesome. It was a great place to grow up. Rhino and I grew up in the organization as young players, along with many others. Dallas Green, of course, brought a lot of us over to Chicago, and you know, it was just a wonderful place to grow up as a young player around winning. All those great players, Mike and Lefty and Tug McGraw, Gary Maddox, I can keep going, Manny Trio, Boa. Just a wonderful place to grow up if you were a young, aspiring professional player and learning really how to play the game the right way.
Here with Bobby Dernier. Bobby, I want to ask, so the Cubs had not won a division since World War II. And the Cubs, that 84 team, broke the jinx. First inning, you're at bat, and you did what no one had done in 2 generations with that first inning at bat in the first game of the NLCS. What happened, Bobby Dernier?
Well, you know, I think I mentioned yesterday that it was, you know, it's that when you're growing up in the backyard and you're playing your, you know, neighborhood games and pretending to be, you know, bottom of the ninth, World Series, you know, game 7, and you got a big at bat, or you're shooting a free throw, 1-1, down 1, with no time left. And so you had all that stuff under your belt as a kid, along with all the hard work, of course, that goes into, you know, the professional life. And so I felt fully prepared, having been in Philly, of course, the year before in the World Series. I didn't get an at bat in the playoffs, but I really felt prepared going into '84 and that first at bat. All I remember was, just feeling very calm and focused. And, you know, like Sarge said, Gary Matthews, he said, we're out here to hunt the fastball. And I was hunting fastballs that day, and I didn't miss it. So I felt that first, I tell people I was the first one to clap as soon as I hit it, and I knew I got it, and the wind was blowing out. So it was one of the loudest moments I was ever a part of at Wrigley Field. I know that, and the crowd got immediately into the game, and I always felt like if I did something like that, created some damage, then now you got to deal with Sandberg and Matthews and Durham and Moreland and Jody Davis and all these monsters behind me. So I knew we were off to a good start, and first 2 games, that was the case.
Yeah, watch that with my dorm buddies from undergrad. Bobby, I'll let again, the first Cub to score in postseason since World War II, and that began the great clawback for the Cubs. It was wonderful to be there that summer of '84. Harry was mayor of Rush Street. You could take the L up to Wrigley and watch some great games. Taste of Chicago, and they had the planetarium and the field museums. The Miracle Mile, Michigan Avenue was just rocking, as was the Loyola shopping area, the jazz bars, the restaurants. Coach, you probably want to ask, you're a Philly guy, you probably want to ask Bobby about his Philly days. Go, Coach.
Yeah, Bobby, great to have you on. One of the questions I have, you alluded to it already. Dallas Green came over from Philly and was GM and president, brought a lot of players over there. Yourself, Larry Boa, Rhino, a few others. But for us in Philadelphia, we had been getting close in the 70s. We couldn't get past the Dodgers. They fired Danny Ozark in the summer of 1980, and Dallas Green came down from the front office and lit a fire under your asses. What exactly did he say? Because he didn't take any crap from the veterans, and you guys went on in 1980 to win it all. What happened when Dallas Green came down there?
Well, in 1980, I was along with Rhino and others there. We were in Double-A, Reading, Pennsylvania, in the Eastern League, in the minor leagues, throughout the summer of '80. And at the end of the summer, in late August, Mark Davis, Ozzie Virgil, myself, Don Marson, we got called up to the big leagues for September for the pennant stretch. And so that was my first, experience in the big leagues. So I wasn't a part of the whole season, but I had Dallas. He was our farm director. He was a director of the minor leagues. So the previous 2 years, I knew him as the boss. He was the boss and of the minor leagues, and so he was highly aware of who he had in the farm system when it came time to expand the roster. I wasn't even on the 40-man roster yet, but he brought me up with the specific idea of going in for late inning defense for Greg Luzinski in left field, 7th, 8th, 9th inning, and pinch running. And so I played in, I think, 10 games that September, in some very significant games and significant spots of the games. And although I never played left field, all I had played was a couple of years at that point in center field. So it was a bit scary. I can tell you, if you went to Veterans Stadium back then, that bank of lights that surrounded the upper tier were rather intimidating in left and right field. So you had to really learn how to do that. Greg Gross was a big part of helping me out with that in pregame and get me prepared. So it was a bit intimidating, but I wasn't scared or nervous. I was just excited. To be a part of that, small part, but a part of that team in '80, it put a stamp on what was to come later. And being prepared to play once I did get a chance to play every day. And Dallas was, Rhino and I kind of agreed. He was kind of our godfather of baseball in a lot of ways because we had him at every level.
Here with Bobby Dernier, the great Chicago Cub legend. Scott Corey, I know you're going to go one of three ways here with your triple option offense. You're either going to ask Bobby about how the Royals are going to be this year, since he's also close to the Royals, or you're going to ask Bobby what he thinks of the Ricketts family operation there, or you're going to ask him about the John Wayne persona that Dallas Green had. Your potluck, Scotty. Go.
Well, I'm actually going to throw him a curveball and go on a different tangent.
Go for it, Scott.
Talk to us a little bit, as a fan growing up in the 80s, we watched you guys on WGN and other networks, but Ryne Sandberg is kind of a unique character in my opinion, because during the games, he always seemed, in a lot of ways, kind of like John Wayne or Joe Montana, if he'd get the job done. But then he became a manager, and all of a sudden he's like Bobby Knight out there. Talk to us a little bit about the transformation of his persona from going from one side of the dugout to the other side of the dugout.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I was in the minor leagues with a roving outfield base running instructor. Rhino was a minor league manager in the Cubs organization at the time. And he was in Double-A, Sevierville, Tennessee, near Knoxville, for the Tennessee Smokies, which is still a part of the Cubs organization. And I got a call from my boss, O'Neary Guido, with the farm director. And he said, Bobby, would you go into Knoxville? I need you to talk to Sandberg. He's been having some difficulty. He's been, getting tossed out of games and a lot of confrontations with umpires and so on. And so I went in there, and the first night I just watched the game, and we didn't talk. I didn't talk about that. But the next day I went into locker room early, and I went into his office. I said, "Hey, you got a minute? I need to talk to you." And I had, remember I met Rhino when he was 18. I was 21. He's kind of like a little brother to me, but kind of like a big brother too, in some kind of ways. He was a great leader. But I told him, I said, "Hey," I said, "Rhino, since when has just being who you are not good enough? Why are you trying to create this character or this caricature of yourself as a manager? That's not who you are. My experience of you is, you're pretty calm, cool, and collected, like you mentioned, kind of Montana-like." I said, "Since when is that not good enough?" And he kind of cocked his head and kind of, pursed his lips a little bit. And he said, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. I don't know what's got into me, but I just felt like I had to show more emotion than I had in the past." And I said, "Well, look, you're not Earl Weaver. You're not Billy Martin." I said, "You're Ryan Sandberg. Why don't you just go back to being that guy? That's a pretty good guy to be." And so anyway, he calmed it down, and although I think he got a lot out of the coaching and managing part of the game, I think ultimately learned that wasn't really what he wanted to do in the end. Although he aspired to do it, he got there and he kind of fulfilled that dream. I think ultimately it's awful hard, fellas, to top, a Hall of Fame playing career and go into managing. We all know you're hired to be fired. It's just the nature of the beast. And he couldn't, that's one reason he couldn't be really hired in Chicago at the time. When the Ricketts family came, Theo brought the new guys, and it was just not the right time and place for him to manage in Chicago. That was ultimately what he wanted to do. But having grown up in the Philly organization, we talked about that when he got hired, and I said, "Boy, this is like a 360. You get to go back to where we started and, manage with the fighting Bills." So, all said and done, I think he really got a lot out of it, but he did have a problem there at one point and had to kind of calm down his antics.
That's great. Bobby Dernier, we've got our home and away voice of the Ottawa Braves, Blake Griffin, here. And just to kind of formulate this, Bobby and Coach and Scott, Blake at his age is as removed from 1984 as I was cheering in Wrigley for Bobby Dernier in 1984, as far away as I was from Ted Williams in 1944 when he was in the military, 40 years each way. So I'd like to get your, are you Gen Z or are you Gen A, Blake? I'd like to get your perspective and a question or comment for Chicago Cub great Bobby Dernier, who honored us by coming to Ottawa for Professor Andy Hazuka's great conference.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for coming out. I know Andy is phenomenal. He's got a lot of connections in the baseball world, and he's probably one of the better professors at Ottawa University. Made me fall in love with baseball literature a little bit more than I already had, and I extended my breadth as a broadcaster a little bit. But I mean, being the lone Gen Z, I think here, being the youngest guy on this show, I am curious to know your opinion on the state of the game now. I mean, I know you played in the one of the golden eras of baseball when I mean it was at the forefront of a lot of people's minds when it was truly America's pastime. You've seen that kind of slip a little bit lately, but your sort of opinion on sort of the state of baseball now.
Well, I mean, it's obviously it's become very worldly. The game has expanded, really throughout the globe. Opening day for the Cubs was last week in Tokyo. And so that was kind of weird. But 2 games on, it's hard on the players. Once we hit that light switch to start the year, we put on a game face, and here we go. It's a long marathon. But when you start and stop like that, they're back in spring training for a little while before they open in Arizona. So that was a weird dynamic. But I think overall, I mean, I love watching the kids play today. I'm going to go Thursday and watch the Royals open. My best man in my wedding, Willie Wilson, is throwing out the first pitch, and we're going to get together and play some golf Friday and Saturday afterwards. And so I'm looking forward to opening day just like I have forever. And I'm a big Royals fan. I grew up here with the Kansas City A's and the Royals and the Chiefs, and we got a pretty good level of sports here in Kansas City. It's been pretty healthy recently, and Bobby Witt Jr. and the kids we have out there today, they're fun to watch. So I'm into it. I obviously follow the Cubs. They got a new exciting young center fielder I'm interested in. And I reminded Tom Ricketts that, the the only two postseason leadoff home runs in Cub history were me and Dexter Fowler. and to my knowledge, anyway, it seems like when you won it, you had a leadoff hitter playing center field, and it seems to be a pretty good key to winning. And so, this was a few years ago, and sure enough, now we've got a kid, Carl Armstrong, out there who looks like he might be a real gem, and he brings a lot of personality to the game. I love watching him play. But the kids are different today, in that regard. They're more excitable. They demonstrated on the team or on the field. If we did that back when I played, Gary Matthews or Schmidt or Carlton, one of those older players would have grabbed you by the collar and say, "Looky here, we have a certain way of behaving out here," and we wouldn't have got away with it so much back then. But I like it. I like that they show emotion, and so I'm into it. I'm more. I could criticize a little bit. I don't like the bigger bases, the oven mitts on the hands, and 90 feet sacred to me. But other than that, I'm good with it.
Bobby Dernier, the Cubs great. Blake's got one more question.
Well, you talked about being a pretty big Royals fan. They're in a pretty good spot here, and us being sort of a partner with the Royals. We get all their games broadcast here at KOFO. What's your opinion on this upcoming season for them?
Well, I like them. People ask me. I picked them to win the division.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're poised to do that. Of course, we all know you got to stay healthy, but they can pitch. They play defense, and they got some guys who can move that baseball at the plate. So, there's no better player in the league for me than Bobby Witt. So, I think the sky's the limit with that team. You know how it goes. If you're in the race, you get into the trading deadline, you make a move or two, and we could see some more postseason baseball here in 2025.
Bobby Dernier, and we're in our extra innings segment here, sponsored by Midwestern Renewable Energy LLC, energy for a strong America, as clean as green, and Life Runners. Go to liferunners.org, helping expectant mothers and babies on the way and after they are born. Life Runners, and thanks to Jim and Cindy Jandron family, who had lunch with me and Governor Pete Ricketts not terribly long ago. Pete Ricketts, a big supporter of Life Runners. We got a couple things. Bobby, stay with us for a few picks. We have a coaching carousel update from our own intrepid reporter, Scott Corey, breaking some huge news. I'm happy to hear this because I didn't want Darren DeVries. I wanted this guy, and it looks like we got him. Scotty, yesterday on KXEL, you correctly predicted West Virginia would make a hard run at McCollum, but it looks like Beth Getz has got him. Talk to us.
Yeah, as of right now at the University of Iowa, after 15 years, athletic director Beth Getz had decided to part ways with Fran McCaffrey, which opened it up. Coaching change here at Iowa City, and the first major battle under the Getz administration, we went after Darren DeVries, who had Drake connections as well as Iowa connections. He ended up signing at Indiana. Coach Knapp and I have talked about that at great length. And breaking this morning, Sunday morning, it sounds like Drake coach Ben McCullum, who also has ties to the Iowa program, born in Storm Lake, Iowa, northwest Iowa, was there with the great Dr. Tom Davis, the last coach at Iowa to take the men to the Sweet 16, has agreed in principle, according to numerous newspaper outlets, to become the new head coach at the University of Iowa.
Coach Knapp, what do you think about that? And Requiem for Fran McCaffrey. I know you and Fran are friends going back many years. What say you about what looks like the putative McCollum hire?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate Ben McCollum. If, in fact, it does become final, which we think it will. He went 31-4 at Drake this year. His team played very well in the NCAA tournament. McCollum went 395-91, won 4 D2 national championships. He knows how to win. I like his demeanor on the sideline. I liked his schemes. Again, I only watched him in the Missouri Valley tournament and the last couple of days with his Drake team. So congratulations to Iowa. I really believe that, you can be a very good coach with the X's and O's, but assembling a roster is a key today. And it isn't always about money, although it starts there, unfortunately. When you're recruiting players, they don't want to know about the business school, or they don't want to know about the fraternity situation. They want to know how much am I going to play and how much you're giving me. So my understanding is that Iowa has stepped up with the NIL money. That's a good thing. And, we'll see. I wish them the very best. Fran McCaffrey, to me, again, for your listeners, I grew up in Philadelphia. Fran is 7 years behind me. He was an outstanding high school and college player in the Philly area. He had a very good win-loss record. But, hey, look, I've been in this position. You got to win games, and you can't get stale. And it probably was time to move on. So I wish Fran the very best. But Iowa is a great Big Ten basketball school, and they're looking forward to getting back to the top of that league.
And now we'll segue, thanks, Coach, to our Final Four picks, or at least who we're rooting for. And by the way, you can listen to Coach Pat Knapp's great podcast, Play by Play, found on every platform out there, including Spotify. Bobby Dernier, who do you like in this March Madness? Boy, a tough thing happened to our KU Jayhawks on the way through a season. Start out as preseason number one and one and done in the NCAAs. Who do you like? Who's left in there, Bobby?
Well, you hit the sweet spot for me because I'm a sports fan first, and I'm into March Madness. Have been since Magic and Bird in '79. So I watched the barn burner there with Florida and UConn before we went on air. That was a good game. I like Florida a lot. I think they look like they're going to be a tough out. So for me, if I had to pick one, I'd probably jump on the Gators. But, I also don't discount talking about coaches, Michigan State's still alive, so I'm gonna keep them in the back of my mind just for fun. And of course, Duke. You can't, you get a kid flag. I mean, they don't come much better. So, and Houston, Houston, they're not number one seeds for nothing.
Yep.
And so, you got to look at them. But I love the underdogs, and I love that Drake team. I was all over because we got kids from Kansas City on that team, all over that team, and so. I was not wanting Missouri and KU to lose, of course, but it blew up my bracket, at least the early part of that. and we'll see how it plays out. But I'm definitely into March Madness, the Masters, baseball season getting ready to start. And I'm playing golf a lot right now, so it doesn't get much better for me.
We'll have to bring Bobby back, especially since we're the home and away voice of the Kansas City Royals. Scotty, you know me. I love the underdog, too. Unless it's Creighton, who busted everybody's bracket that first round. But, I'm a big Bruce Pearl fan because, Scotty, you and I remember when Bruce was coaching for Dr. Tom Davis at Iowa. I was rooting for Auburn last night, much to the chagrin of all my friends up north. Scotty, who do you got left in this thing?
Well, I kind of agree with what Bobby said. The only deviation I would go from on that being the western or on the southern bracket. I actually have Tom Izzo's Michigan State Spartans getting the Final Four, taking on Florida. And then I think the national championship will be decided in the Final Four between Duke coming out of the East as well as Houston coming out of the Midwest. I think the winner of that game will go on to win it all. But it's kind of interesting, Coach Knapp. This year, it doesn't seem like we've seen the huge upsets that we were accustomed to this time around. So it's going to be interesting to see if the so-called blue bloods can kind of continue this run to the Final Four.
I'll give Coach the last word, but I want to get Blake Griffin. Blake, you had soured on KU early. You saw bad signs early. You're not shocked about KU being out of the tournament. Who do you have left in here? Because I know you had done really well with your bracket out of the gate. You were 14 for 16 the first set. How are you doing now?
Yeah, the first day was great. The rest of the tournament has been terrible. As per your March Madness bracket is, my West region is all mumble jumbled, and my East region is terrible. I still have my two front runners in there, Houston and Florida. I've got that being a pretty high scoring championship matchup with Houston probably coming out on top.
Coach, you get the final word here. Coach, how's this going to play out? And then give us your pick on the women's bracket real quickly, too.
Well, my bracket got busted when St. John's lost, so I'm going to put Florida in their place. I do have Auburn. I'm not a Duke fan, and I think they're going to lose to either Arizona or Alabama. But I have Alabama and Houston on the other side of the bracket. And Houston almost blew that game to BYU yesterday. So I'm a little down on the Cougars, but I have them winning it all in my bracket.
Bobby Dernier, you're awesome. Will you come back later on here? We want to have you back again. You're awesome to be with us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and happy to do it. Let me know. We'll keep up as the summer flows on, okay?
Sounds great. Guys, for Blake Griffin here in studio, this is John Jacobson. This beautiful Sunday evening, third Sunday of Lent. Hey, catch us next week. Catch us on the podcast in between. And as always, be safe, be smart, be good, be strong. Love Jesus Christ. And God bless us, everyone. Until we meet again, bye-bye.